Good morning, everyone. I think we got an amazing spot. We are between you guys and the lunch. So we'll actually make it two things, right? We'll make it something of meaningful and value and also entertaining. You will do the meaningful part and I'll do the entertaining part. Okay? So that said, we'll get through our intros pretty quickly. This is Raj Kunduru. I'm a partner at KPMG. I lead our emerging tech practice and really focused on the financial services. And I'll stop there and not bore you with my resume.
This is Venkat Rayala. I am an architect, kind of resident architect for Encore practice at KPMG.
Okay. So what we'll really talk about today is, again, I know that Encore, with all of them, everyone who is here is familiar with the low-code, codeless architecture of Encore. So we're not really going to bore you with why Encore, how good it is, because you already know it, and many of you are already, again, buyers for that. What we're going to really talk about is, in addition to this extraordinary technology, what does it really take to make it an enterprise class? So this is really a slide. I think what it is that it kind of is saddening also that it actually dates my age in here, is that as you have seen from VB5 to many of the things of the RPA, the codeless architecture, to be honest with you, the word is new, but that kind of concept kind of existed, like a drag and drop kind of thing. But the question would be, is that why now? Why is it different today? The one part is, only during the last 3 or 4 years, they've actually made it enterprise class. So before, when I had something of that sort, it was end user computing, or I could do some programs that were installed on my desktop and I could run maybe a couple of users. But can I do a drag and drop and actually build a portal that actually can sustain millions of transactions with 25,000 advisors using it every day? It was not possible, right? So that was really the power of technology of making it enterprise class. But then the question remains is, if you have an amazing loaded gun like that, is it in itself helpful to make it an enterprise class into mainstream? So this is exactly where the chasm is, where majority of our clients that we are serving that are there, which is, they're a very mature organization with very smart people, and you have an amazing technology, but said, what more? What we're going to talk about in the subsequent slides is, in addition to the technology, what is your operating model that talks about your roles, governance, architecture alignment, and a delivery methodology that actually makes it wherein you'd say that, I'm not going to use Encore just as one-off or for this fringe use case, but I'm going to make it my mainstream. And I'm going to be very honest, because there are some of my clients here, I'm not going to embellish it because they're going to call me out and ask me tough questions. Elena, you're there. Okay, so that's I'll go to the next one. So really, what does it take in terms of an operating model? Okay, I'm not going to really go through all of that, but the 4 key elements that we're seeing is, when I take a codeless architecture like Encore, but I take a typical SDLC lifecycle of I have a BA, I have a developer, I have a front-end developer, a back-end developer, a DevOps engineer, and go on with 16 different roles, it really doesn't make any sense then, right? Then I think, I'm using carpentry from 1700s with all the power tools that I'm getting from Lowe's. It doesn't really make any sense. So that's why what we have done is, in the subsequent slides, we'll talk to you in terms of how have we simplified, when I say we, naturally KPMG, right? How have we simplified it, right? So say that, okay, now I have this new technology, but how am I going to implement it in a role structure? So we're going to talk about what those new roles are. And it's not that, me and my partner in crime, Harvey, just came up one day and had a couple of shots and came up with it. There was a lot of learning and war scars, right, to do that. Then we'll talk about governance. And again, let's be very honest. There is nothing like I can create something of a click of a button, but in a regulated environment, the regulators do not allow us to do click of a button and goes to production. How do you have the lightweight governance? Well, Venkat will talk about the architecture aspects of it, because codeless doesn't mean architecture-less. We learned it the hard way, right? We'll go through that as well. Okay, so quickly, what is the roles? Again, naturally, I'm a computer engineer, so everything has to be a cross-sectional engineering view. If not, I just cannot understand that. So when we were talking about, what is really, how do you come up with these new roles, right? Naturally, I'm not going to have 16 roles in it, but it's not just one role that, magically everyone goes through a boot camp and they come in and drag and drop and magic happens. It does not. I'm pretty sure all of you would agree with that, right? So what we have done is, it's a bit more scientific, but bear with me for my own passion here, is that what we have done is we have done a cross-sectional view of Uncork to say, what are all the capabilities from UI, from the workflow, all the way to the greatest stuff integrating into different APIs? And we said, okay, you know what, based on this one, there are three kind of things. Our business engineers, traditionally, these are the BAs that had a boring job of writing laborious Word documents. Now, actually, they're saying is, okay, I'm a business engineer. I know asset management. I know insurance. I know banking. But they are actually building the dark blue parts of it. They're not just writing them, but they're actually building it. But at the same time, the moment they come from the dark blue to the lighter blue part, that's where they say, you know, I wish I had a computer engineering degree. I'm going to stop there, right? Because that's when I'm talking about API, payloads, integrations, and all of them. It's not that they cannot. In fact, there is one guy on my team who has a degree in Renaissance literature, right? And he is one of the best configurators that we have, right? But it's an exception. But there are some of them that say, thank you, Raj. I love it. I want to stay in the dark blue. But they are doing it so it accelerates the whole thing, right? So I'm merging some roles and doing it. And the light blue part is the one we call it as an integration specialist, or really these are the engineers that really are very good with plumbing, right? How do I drill into your core systems? How do I get the data? How do I massage it, right? All of that. And everything around that is really the architecture piece. There are two parts of the architecture, as we would call it. When it's not just designing within Uncork, but how does it integrate into your ecosystem? Naturally, when you're building an application on Uncork, it doesn't stand on its own, obviously. It needs some data that it has to drill through, but your solution architects are the one. But now, as I said, from 16 roles, we were able to get to these three. But I wanted to show this slide is that it didn't come up just like that. We went through a lot of things, and have we done it on the very first time? Absolutely not. It would be arrogant for me to say that, oh, we came up with it. No, we did not. We went through it, but after our 70+ implementation across multiple clients, now it's an engine. Anything to add? Okay. Okay, so I'll go to the next one. Perfect. Architecture alignment.
All right. So remember, again, this is codeless architecture, not like really architectureless application development or anything we're doing as such. In fact, the architecture is like a really key piece of the puzzle here. And architects have become like, even though we have like technical architecture, solution architecture and all, it kind of merges a little bit in the codeless architecture here, what we have quickly noticed, right? And you are, this is like really key where architects are driving two aspects of it. One is you are also looking at the two things, right? Like one is the around the box Uncork, and then within the Uncork, how we are designing. Those are the two really important critical aspects. And then obviously we have given some of the critical considerations here, but along with those things, you consider any other compliance-related things or any other industry-specific things you need. But these are the critical factors that you would consider for architecture. We can go further into details, but in
the interest of lunch.
Yeah, in the interest of lunch, obviously, we can. I think if there are any questions, I mean, feel free to ask. But we are
absolutely. It would look like a stand-up comedy event if you don't ask any questions.
Yeah.
Make it easy.
Yeah.
If it's coming from KPMG, I would beg them to be easy questions.
So I think one of the things that we were hearing in the sessions earlier today was around architecture, right? So to your point, Raj, like when we take in the traditional developers and we kind of bring them into Uncork, there are a lot of changes, right? You're moving from a relational database SQL to a MongoDB, which is a flat, right? So how do you kind of train your traditional developers to get more familiar with Uncork, right? There's a lot of benefits of going with a no-code, low-code platform, but there are also restrictions at the same time, right? So how do you kind of work around some of those things? And I think that's where architecture plays a really, really solid and big part. And I was having this conversation with someone else earlier today that what can you do in Uncork? And my answer was you can do anything you imagine in Uncork. And the problem is not building in Uncork. you need to think through the architecture because you need to maintain whatever you're building, right? So maintenance, enhancements will become very, very difficult if you don't think through the architecture.
I'll tell you the biggest thing that I think that's a good question. And the reason for that is we had, hardcore engineers who were like Java and then C#. Honestly, I'll be honest with you, some of them did not like it. Right? The really hardest thing. I think there is definitely a shift. Let's be very honest that even if you're going into large organization, when you have teams that have, they've been building applications on Angular, React, Java, Node.js, and all of them. They're like, really, why do I change, right? The biggest thing that I'll tell you honestly is, before Henry Ford came up with the assembly line for the car, trust me, every nut and bolt and everything was actually handmade. I kid you not, right? Google it, you'll know. And that's exactly how it is. But now what it is, just like the car manufacturing is going from manufacturing into assembly, that's why nobody calls car manufacturing, they call it assembly. The software engineering is really that right now. Why would you have to manufacture it when you have all of these pieces, focus on assembly? It's easier said than, but then when we go through that kind of a thing, that's the kind of a training or a mind shift that I think we have to accept. It's really not bad. Assembly doesn't really mean that you're any less architect. It only means that you have to think differently.
Yeah, you start like with your baseline architecture, right? I mean, as soon as you hear this new codeless architecture, you would think, okay, do I have to change everything, all my architecture, make it upside down? No, actually, good news is that you can make smaller increment changes, and then you can publish your new baseline architecture for Uncork. What we would advise is start small and then make incremental, and within no time, I think you'll have your base architecture for Uncork. That is why it is critical, really. Architecture practice you set up, and you have to guard it, and you have to make those incremental changes to make it like really, really good for the rest of your enterprise.
Okay.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Hey, just a kind of a follow-on question to that in terms of, I think architecture, we get it, how it fits into it, we get integration, but the actual people doing the build, we have like a lot of friction with our core engineering team, like I think you had talked about.
Yeah.
Were you hiring like specific people to do this build on Uncork that are outside of your core engineering, or how was that structured?
So, good question. I think like what I say, there are two parts that we're doing it. One is, the way KPMG has, we have our horizontal of the technology and then all the verticals of the industries. So if I go back to this, the business engineers are genuinely coming from all of our domains, right? Like the business domains. So these are the people that actually know business process and others. But to answer your question on tech engineers, we are actually getting them from technology itself, right? However, the training is not how you build it on Uncork, but the training is on how differently to think through that, right? And then, again, if I have to say that out of the 10 people, did all of them mesmerizingly said, yes, we'll do it? No. Initially, if the percentage was, 60% people liked it, today I would say that increased to 90%, because we were able to really show them the value of that and then how it is. Yeah, but it takes time. The mind shift is the one that takes time, and our training, believe it or not, for the tech engineers has been on the mind shift more than actually teaching Uncork.
Yeah, I also come from traditional software development. When I came, really, it took a while to shift your mind, right? Like, that this mind shift that happens. Once it happens, then you got the hang of things.
Yeah.
Then you see the power of Uncork, what they have created here.
Now we'll go to again, this is a classic example on when, yes, there is the Uncork, there's the architecture and all of them. They came back and say, what can I build with Uncork? My answer always has been, can I drill a hole with a screwdriver? Certainly. Would I do it? No. So there is really a place and time for every platform. So the way we have been doing it for insurance companies, I'll tell you, even for the banks, is can I build a core system on Uncork, irrespective of me answering yes or no? The part that is around the core system, right? Everything in terms of the digitization, the digital experience pieces of that is a slam dunk. So that's why we've been talking about this freeze and wrap is, you get to the core, yes, you do that, but start with your digital layers that surround everything around that. If you make that experience better, then you can progressively get into the core. Anyway, really, that's the message of this beautiful picture.
For insurance practice, building the core products is not the right thing to do with Uncork? Is that what I'm hearing?
Actually, no, I think it depends, right? So for instance, if there are specialty lines, if you have specialty lines which are lower in volume but very unique products that you're building, then if you were to get a core platform, then I don't think you'll have an ROI because they're a very expensive one. In those cases, honestly, I would rather suggest that, again, go with it.
In
So
fact,
it's never an answer of yes or no. It's more of a situational thing of what kind of products you're building.
I think the only thing I would say a little differently is what you're saying is if you have a guide wire, and there are a lot of things that you're not getting from guide wire, you can start kind of building an ecosystem of digital solutions around it. So you still have your core, and your core does what the core does, and it does it really, really well, which is accounting. And then you build an ecosystem of digital products around it, which is where the Uncork works really well because of its APIs and the way it integrates with the legacy technology.
Yeah, I don't want to go to the specific. I mean, I'd love to do that later, but here is the challenge, right? So we have GuideWire, and GuideWire is really expensive to build on,
Right.
and it's going to take time. And the business says, I want to go, introduce new products. And I'm thinking, oh, should I use Uncork? But if I need to use Uncork, I need to build the core applications, right? So if I can't build the core applications with Uncork, then what's the point of having the front end with Uncork, right? So just to think about that. Right?
Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. Venkat is very smart of delegating all the boring stuff to me. Yeah, I'll talk about that, man. Governance, good. So again, when we talk about the governance again is when you have, I'm pretty sure that many of you are building software, you know this. The IT controls, the data movement controls, or any of these controls don't go away just because it's a codeless architecture. All I'm saying is that there is no myth that you cannot implement those in Uncork. The thing is, when you're designing those systems and building those systems and integrating with them, there is a method to madness in terms of doing it, but they still apply and we still do. That's the essence of this one.
Yeah, security controls is another example, right?
Yeah.
Like every client we go to, they have different security controls, different standards. So adapting those, again, I mean, that is another aspect of it where you would look at it right at the gate, okay, how do I adapt it, right? So that is another aspect where these architects come into place where they're asking, okay, right questions and moving along.
And I don't know why the clients make it so difficult. With every client that we work with, it's a simple SSO. Everybody says,
Everybody
it's a
is different.
SAML token. Trust me,
Yeah.
no. Out of the 70, maybe we have seen 50 different flavors on a simple SSO can be integrated. I mean, luckily there is a way forward for that, but there is always that uniqueness.
Yeah.
How have you guys, or what narratives have you guys used to help people understand that configuration doesn't necessarily mean risk? Legacy organizations, when you hear configuration, risk goes through the roof, or
Right.
risk teams come flying out of the windows. It's crazy.
Right.
How have you helped shape that narrative that it's not necessarily true? It's just the value you get from, that's what we're struggling with, is trying to articulate that. So I don't know if any tips or anything you
Next
guys talk
time when
about.
I go to market, you're going to come with me. That is a brilliant one. Yeah, absolutely. So I think, what it is we were actually debating even to call them as configuration engineers, and that's why I think if you see that, we're calling them business engineers, tech engineers, and all of them. The exact reason is that configuration for me is I already have a product. I'm making some minor tweaks or setting some parameters or others is really configuration. Then that's where the controls come in, right? But this is really, think of it as a building software with a different programming language. I think that's the key thing here, right? So I think, there are controls of software delivery lifecycle, but it's really not configuration kind of controls. I think that's why, when you look at the residual risk from an ERM practice in your thing, every time you say configuration, absolutely, it goes with your third-party risk up and all of them. But in this case, it's not a third party. It's like instead of me using Java, I happen to use Uncork. I think that's the big one. But you have to definitely deliberately have those conversations with the ERM and your, line 2. And we do that. we do that, we go through, and that's why those cross-sectional diagrams kind of helps because when I go to the line 2 and line 3 of internal audit, we actually help them to really say that this is really what it is. It's not a mythical thing. I hope that helps.
No, it does. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions, folks? Yeah, strange enough, we don't get paid by the slide, so we had very limited slides here. Yeah. That's it then.
Don't we have one more?
No, I killed it. No, I think I have this one.
Yeah, this is the delivery enablement, right? This is where you probably would see right away what is the efficiencies that you gain. Probably in the design and testing phase, you see the right away lot of efficiencies that you gain. But if you are like a little bit creative, and also if you are like looking and creatively thinking, there are lots and lots of places where you can gain efficiencies, and that is why I think we have been doing this for a couple of years, and actually 4 years now,
Yeah.
and we have seen across the board. But it took a while, but consistently we have pushed the boundaries in all of our agile processes, and then across the board here and there, smaller gains, and that resulted quite a bit of gains in the speed to market and efficiencies that you would get.
And by the way, Steve, there is a typo. It's not configure, build. Before you point that out. Yeah.
For the modern part, where you said that modeling function.
Sorry,
What
go ahead.
technology are you using for
Web analytics or monitoring?
Very tough question. You go.
Analytics?
No,
What was
this
the question?
guy. Even logging.
Oh, we are using Uncork. You can do event logging in Uncork.
What about web analytics, like
You
usage,
can.
performance?
Yeah.
You actually can. In fact, I think, for one of our clients, can't name the client, I think they also have some BI kind of APIs that once you have those logs, you can actually code them, and then you can integrate with any of your, I would say, instrumentation like Dynatrace or others that you have.
Tableau.
Yeah, you definitely can. They do have some, off-the-shelf, reports from Tableau,
Right.
but sometimes you can even pull in the data and integrate them into your log aggregators if you have an Elasticsearch or things like that.
Yeah, and then user access logs and all. One of our clients actually pulls them into their SEIM tools as well. So there are a lot of ways you can do, and then you can also they also give you direct connectivity to the MongoDB that is behind Uncork, and you can download the data and also run analytics on MapR or any other tools you have.
And all this through APIs, by the way.
Yeah, it's all either API or direct connect to the database.
Sorry, if there are no more questions, just one thing I would say is, I think we've been working with Uncork for over 4 years now, and in the last 4 years, we've built a lot of applications, and we can talk about Uncork all day, all night. So if you have specific questions on kind of architecture patterns or security, or as you're building applications, how do you take it to enterprise, love to talk to you. We have a booth outside, and we can connect with you after the create session as well.
Awesome. If no more questions, then you can clap now.